What's going on, traders? In this video, I want to talk to you about one simple thing, keeping your trading simple. It's something that has stood out to me and proven time and time again to be one of the biggest needle movers, one of the biggest drivers towards positive P&Ls, green P&Ls, and me hitting my goals. So I want to make another video just talking to you like this, face to face, describing what I mean, why I'm an advocate for keeping your trading what I call stupidly simple. Now, if you don't know me from a hole in the wall, I've been in the markets for quite a while. I trade live every dang day, 9:15 a.m. Eastern, so you don't have to guess whether or not what I'm going to show you right here on screen is factual, is true, because it can all be edited, right? But here's me getting moved into a Top 1 Futures live account, the futures prop firm that I trade with primarily, that I'm also partnered and affiliated with. Here's me taking a payout yesterday. Here's me taking a payout the day before. I'll have my editor throw some of these on screen. But again, you don't have to take my word for any of that. You can just watch me trade live, ask questions, real live trading, stops, executions, take profits, lost accounts, run-ups and payouts, everything in between, right? Because I don't claim to be the best trader. 9:15 a.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube, 100% free. No VIP, no course, no mentorship, no special program where I manage your crypto, none of that stuff. So happy to have you on the live streams. But let's jump into it. Back when I first got into trading, when I first really started to hone in on technical analysis, I was under the assumption that so many of us are, that trading must be complex. We know it's difficult, right? And I don't want to confuse difficulty with simplicity in this video, because trading from starting out to now remains very difficult. It gets easier, but it remains very difficult. But starting out, I felt that I needed to have this very robust, complex, multi-indicator, multi-tool strategy that was, insanely complex and sounded really cool when I described it to others, all these different tools and what they do and how I use them in all these fancy ways. And I felt that was needed. I felt, how could it possibly be that you could just stare at raw price action, market structure, maybe some volume, maybe a little bit of order flow, and be able to make money consistently, right? You can't. You need to crack this crazy code, and that's done through indicators, through a ton of different tools, through complexity, through this very rules-based if-then paragraphs I had written out and tons of indicators overlaid on my chart. That's how I felt I needed to be able to gain some consistency in order to get profitable, start making money, right? And what I've found over time, the way so many of us do, painfully, is that's just not the case, right? I had everything on my chart. MACD, RSI, Bollinger Bands, multi-MAs, EMAs. I was watching 47 different markets, news, fundamentals. I was trying to use how all of these data releases were going to impact price and then how I could use that to my advantage. Very rules-based with all of these complex if-then filters to create this super robust strategy. And really what I was aiming for, something that was really mechanical, that I could just kick back on the beach once I figured it out and, essentially it would just trade for itself. And no matter how hard I tried, no matter how far down that road I went, there was nothing but more and more losses. There was nothing but more and more frustration. And I can only speak to my personal experience and what I see other traders that seem to be very consistent do. It wasn't until I really stripped my charts back, right? Completely lost faith in this indicator, complex approach. And I really started to make my trading as simple as absolutely possible. And along with that, what came with it was acknowledging that I was going to need to use my own discretion, my own intuition, my experience. Not in this crazy, abstract, fancy way, intuitive, we know what's going to happen only by gut feel, but that you have experience reading the market, right? You're using price action and market structure once you strip everything away from your charts. For me, I like to use some volume, visible range volume profile, right? VWAP, some volume down on the bottom, maybe a little bit of order flow. But rather than trying to be objective and mechanical and completely rules-based, I said, well, I'm going to have to use my intuition a little bit. I'm going to have to use my discretion, my subjective interpretation of what those tools are telling me to do. Is it presenting a good way for me to manage risk, right? Is this an ideal entry, something that I believe is going to have a positive expected value over a long period of time? And simplify my trading down to the bare minimum. Strip my charts, and I mean extremely simple, right? Not 1,000 things that have to happen before I get involved. Yes, I'm using context, but very discretionary. Track what was working, right? That was step 2. Okay, so if I'm not going to have this 100%, objective rules-based strategy with 1,000 indicators, how am I going to be able to apply some consistency? How am I going to do the same thing day in and day out? Because I know markets are very inconsistent on the short term and consistent on the long term. That comes from tracking, right? And early on, that meant a lot of aggressive journaling. Now, I still track, I still review data. Do I journal nearly as aggressively with screenshots of everything and detailed write-outs as I did when I first started? No. But do I still review and spend a lot of time looking at what went on and, have that iterative process of figuring out what's working and what's not working by tracking data and being able to have that to review? Absolutely. And I think the more discretionary you are, the less rules-based, objective you are, the more you have to do that in order to know what the hell's working and what's not working. But man, once I made that switch to a degree from complex, indicator-based, rules-based, to very simple, extremely, extremely simple, technical, letting go of fundamentals, right? Because I was for a long time trying to figure out how news was going to impact the markets, what data releases meant, and how I was going to be able to use them to my advantage, to structure trades, to do something, to not do something. Letting go of all of that and saying, let me just focus on pattern recognition. Let me focus on market structure and price action and time, because I know that indicators, they work, right? We can use them to our advantage, but I'm overlaying more of the same. The indicators I was using were all based on price, time, or volume, some combination of all of those, and it was displaying that in a lagging way on my chart, and I already had all of that, right? So if you are struggling at all in trading, right, or maybe you're early on, maybe you're really advanced, what I continue to have demonstrated to me, and again, this is happening, it keeps happening as I start to focus on some new shiny object. And I'm very good about this at this point in my trading, but there's always something, right? There's always something that I notice. Maybe it is just something very simple with the tools that I'm already using, but I start to focus too heavily on that, and I take focus away from just being very simple with my trading and focusing on the tools that I have in front of me in the traditional basic way that I do. I start to do worse, right? I start to have issues. I start to miss things. I start to overthink, right? Have decision-making fatigue as I'm trying to enter and manage trades. And as I come back, I remove things from my chart. I remove levels. I remove something that I'm using, markup. I make it even more stupidly simple. I do better. The results just scream at me that I'm doing better. I think this can be displayed by also watching traders that I, look up to, right? I don't consider myself to be the best in the world or even close to it. There's dozens and dozens and dozens that I watch still to this day that are, leaps and bounds ahead of me as far as what they've achieved, what they continue to achieve. When I look at those guys, when I look at the traders above me, almost everyone is trading something stupidly simple, extremely simple. It's never this unheard of tool that we don't have access to, this crazy chart with 1,000 different colors and indicators on it. It's almost always the same. It's almost a raw chart. There's always some nuance to the time frames they're using, the way that everything's set up, some kind of combination of maybe volume, maybe a little bit of order flow, especially for the futures market. Maybe they're working with Bookmap, maybe they're working with Sierra charts, footprint charts, but it's almost never this insane tool, custom indicator script that's, doing all of these 47 different, indicator signals and all. Never, almost never. They're also always, I actually don't follow anybody that's consistent with a 100% mechanical rules-based system, objective, meaning no discretion. They're always applying their discretion to some degree or another. Some are way more discretionary. Some are way more objective and rules-based, but they're all applying their discretion. They're applying their experience on whatever tools that they use, whatever combination they use, some indicators, no indicators, raw price action, volume, right? Order flow like we're talking about, but they're applying their discretion. They're using their experience on the charts through years of watching this stuff play out over and over and over again. Their implicit memory to recognize these patterns and then react, to structure trades, to manage trades, right? To do any number of things to generate a profit in the market. That's what I hold core, right? And deep in my root of what I believe is going to help me to continue to get better as a trader, to continue to generate profit. I'm going to have to use my intuition, my discretion. I'm going to have to use my experience. How much and where am I going to apply that? Where am I not going to allow myself to just do something way completely different every day? How am I going to maintain consistency? But how will I recognize I'm going to be able to use that? Along with that, another shiny object, a new tool, something I see somebody else that's making money using is not going to help me. It's not going to make me a better trader. It's not going to shift my P&L in the direction that I would like. That's going to come from keeping things extremely simple, finding a good way to be a great risk manager, and then continuing to get better through time in the markets, right? Actually trading, and then reviewing the data, looking at what's working and what's not working. This stuff sounds really simple, guys, really simple, because it is. It does not mean that trading is easy at all. It is extremely difficult in my humble opinion. Almost nobody that trades makes money, and I don't see anybody that makes money trading in the first couple years consistently. I don't see anybody that holds on to profits in years 1 or 2. This is a multi-year game, as is any difficult profession, career, sport, whatever you be going for that's going to generate a high income. So what I want to leave you with this on is, if you are struggling at all, if you're a newer trader, if you're experienced, how many things do you have on your chart, number one, that you are not using with almost every trading decision? If you're not using them every day, that definitely begs the question why they're there. But how much do you have in your pre-market routine, your actual trading routine, your post-market routine that is redundant, that is just repetitive and overlaying, and maybe taking away something from your ability to manage trades, to execute effectively and quickly? Maybe try to clean that up, to take something off your chart, to reduce something, and be able to then utilize that focus, that attention into what you already have on your chart. Along with that, where are you applying your discretion? Where are you making your subjective, right, calls? It's not to say that it's, just complete BS coming from the middle of nowhere, just straight on feeling. You're reading the market, right? You're creating these if-then statements in your mind. You're recognizing patterns. Where do you want to allow yourself to apply more of that discretion? Where do you want to allow yourself to apply less of that? Maybe on entries, you want to apply more discretion. You want to give yourself the flexibility to enter in a number of different ways. And on trade management, you say, I know after a trade, or when a trade's in profit or a trade's in drawdown, I typically struggle to make good decisions, and I'm going to have, clearer rules and guardrails for what I'm going to do once the trade's on. Maybe it's opposite. The entry is very, very objective and rules-based. Once you're in the trade, you allow yourself the flexibility to scale in, scale out. These are just some examples. Define that stuff for yourself. Decide where you want to apply that discretion. Recognize you're going to have to use it to a degree, and write that into your trading plan as a whole, right? Have a way to be consistent day in and day out, and know where you're allowing for more discretion and less discretion. Hope this video helps, guys. If it did, I'd be more than happy to have you in my free community, trading live with me. 100% free community, 100% live trading, 9:15 a.m. right here on YouTube every dang day. Quick disclaimer, remember, trading is very risky. Most traders do lose money. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't provide financial advice. Nothing I say or do is a suggestion or recommendation to do anything at all. Make sure you do your own research, make your own trading decisions, read CFTC Rule 4.41 on simulated trading, which is what this is, even in funded prop firm accounts, and the affiliate and partnership disclaimer that says I stand to make money from links and codes in my content like Top 1 Futures, code RDF, Bookmap, and others. Hope to see you guys trading live. Talk to you soon.